This is the brief on the controversial sale of FIFA's commercial rights. FIFA is planning to spin off the World Cup's commercial rights into a massive $20 billion company, selling a 20% stake to private investors. It is literally sparking a civil war in the global soccer community. Imagine taking a beloved global public park and selling the ticketing and concession rights straight to Wall Street. We're cutting through the corporate jargon to look at the three core elements of this whole mess. First, what's actually being sold? FIFA's bundling all their cash cows, broadcasting, sponsorships, and tickets into a brand new subsidiary called FIFA Forward Enterprise. Valued at $20 billion, they want to sell a minority stake to private equity led by Joshua Kushner's Thrive Capital to raise up to $4.2 billion. Second, the financial pitch. FIFA President Gianni Infantino is trying to get member nations on board by promising a huge payday. Funding would more than double, and he's dangling an immediate $20 million bonus if federations vote yes by late 2026. So you've kind of got to ask, is this a genuine attempt to democratize football's wealth, or just a heavy-handed ultimatum to buy votes? Finally, the explosive backlash. Governing bodies like UEFA, fan groups, and politicians are absolutely furious, claiming FIFA is selling the soul of football with zero transparency. The big fear here is that profit-driven investors will eventually force more tournaments, disrupt the schedule, and squeeze you, the fans, with Uber-style surge pricing for tickets. To wrap up, while FIFA promises unprecedented billions for grassroots development, critics warn that letting private equity into the boardroom could forever alter the beautiful game.
Imagine taking, the biggest, most passionately followed sporting event on earth, the World Cup, and just hammering a giant for sale sign right onto the pitch.
I mean, it sounds like a bad joke, but based on the financial blueprints and internal memos we are looking at today, it is very, very real. FIFA is basically trying to turn global football into a liquid asset class.
Right. So today we are taking a deep dive into the absolute boardroom brawl going on over this.
Yeah.
FIFA is pitching this massive $20 billion commercial spinoff called FIFA Forward Enterprise.
Yeah, FFE for short.
Exactly. And to really understand why this is tearing the sport apart, we have to look at the actual mechanics of what they're trying to do here.
Right, because this isn't just, selling a few extra sponsorships. FIFA wants to take every single money-making activity it has. So broadcasting rights, ticketing, video game licensing, all of it.
And they just bundle it all into this new subsidiary.
Exactly. Bundle it all into FFE. And the kicker is that JP Morgan came in and valued this new entity at $20 billion.
Wow. $20 billion.
Yeah. So FIFA's grand plan is to take a 20% minority stake in that spinoff and sell it to private equity investors like Thrive Capital.
So they raised what? Roughly $4.2 billion in upfront cash?
About $4.2 billion, yeah.
Yeah.
But to actually pull the trigger on this, Gianni Infantino needs a majority vote from the 211 member associations by September 19th, 2026.
And $4.2 billion buys a whole lot of leverage.
It really does. To get those votes, FIFA is dangling a massive carrot of up to $40 million in funding for each association over the next World Cup cycle.
Okay, wait, let's unpack this setup for a second, because on paper, it sounds completely contradictory.
Yeah.
It is like selling 20% of your family home to a massive corporate landlord.
Yeah, pretty much.
You take their cash, but then you promise your family that the landlord will never, ever have a say in how the house is actually run.
Right. And anyone who knows anything about private equity knows that is just not how it works. I mean, if a firm drops billions on a minority stake, they expect a massive return on investment.
They're going to want to dictate where the thermostat is set, basically.
Exactly. Which brings us perfectly to the fallout. I am guessing European football's governing body does not buy the idea of a silent corporate landlord.
Oh, not for a single second. UEFA is absolutely furious about this.
They released a really blistering statement, didn't they?
They did. They said, and this is a quote, "The soul and governance of football are not assets to trade."
Wow, that is strong.
Very strong. They are calling out a complete lack of transparency on who actually gains financially from this structure. Plus, there was zero prior consultation with them.
So they basically view that September deadline for the $40 million payout as a coercive ultimatum.
Just forcing a vote, yeah. But, there is a deeper geopolitical game being played here, isn't there? This is not just about UEFA being left out of a meeting.
I know, it is entirely geopolitical. By taking that $4.2 billion cash injection and distributing it to smaller nations, especially in the global south, Infantino is effectively buying permanent loyalty.
Oh, I see. So if you enrich those smaller federations, you completely neutralize any opposition coming from the historically wealthy European nations.
Exactly. It bypasses UEFA entirely.
Let's play devil's advocate for a second, though. If I am a fan or a federation president in the developing nation that has historically been totally ignored by the European establishment, this looks like a lifeline.
Oh, absolutely it does.
Right. If Wall Street money genuinely builds new stadiums, training pitches, and youth academies where there were none, isn't that a net positive for the globe, even if private equity takes their cut?
Well, that is exactly FIFA's defense. They call this the democratization of football. And honestly, it is a really compelling argument. Infrastructure is desperately needed in those remote nations.
But I'm guessing the problem is the mechanism of that private equity cut.
Precisely. Thrive Capital is not a charity. They need to turn that $4.2 billion into $8 or $10 billion to satisfy their investor yields. So how do you extract that much profit from a sport?
You squeeze the product.
You squeeze the fans, you implement aggressive dynamic ticket pricing. We are already seeing some 2026 World Cup tickets hitting $2,735.
Which is insane.
It is, and it won't stop at the turnstiles. To generate Wall Street-level returns, media rights will inevitably be ripped away from free television and locked behind really expensive, fragmented streaming paywalls.
So the upfront cash that builds a pitch in a developing nation is basically being paid back with heavy interest by the everyday fan trying to watch a match in their living room.
That is the harsh reality of treating the game like a financial asset. The tension between sporting integrity and financial expansion has never been higher because the fan is ultimately the one funding the dividend.
And that brings all of this right back to you listening. Whether you are a diehard supporter wearing your country's jersey or just a casual viewer tuning in every 4 years, this boardroom battle will directly dictate how much it costs you to simply engage with the sport you love.
It fundamentally changes who gets to access the game.
It really does.
Yeah.
So we will leave you with this to mull over on your own.
Yeah, what is the broader impact here?
Right. Like, if that for sale sign stays on the World Cup and it successfully brings in venture capital, what cherished global cultural institution might be the next to sell a 20% stake to Wall Street?